M&I Wealth Management is proud to sponsor Charlie Sykes, a wealth of information on demand when you need it most. M&I Wealth Management understands your desire for flexible, creative solutions to manage and protect wealth. Visit miwealth.com for information. M&I, redefining wealth management.
One of the interesting things that we've been talking about this week has been the way that the media sets certain narratives and certain templates and how far they're willing to go to advance those templates. Probably the most dramatic incident was, and we've talked about this before, MSNBC taking some remarks from Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney speaking in Pennsylvania, trying to make a contrast between the ineptness, the incompetence of the federal government, and the creativity and the innovation of the private sector, citing an example of a fast food joint called Wawa's. I know it's not a fast food joint. I know it's kind of like the 7-Elevens or the PDQs. In any case, what they did to MSNBC, because they wanted to create the narrative that Mitt Romney was out of touch with real people, so they edited out the context of what he said, and they made him look like he was just sort of clueless, like, wow, look what they do in these sandwich places. This was remember George Bush? George Bush Sr. allegedly had never seen a grocery store scanner, so he was amazed by it, and there that became the media narrative. How out of touch he was with the economy at the time. Well, one of the stories that the media has latched onto this week is the story about Eric Hovde and the comments he made about the so-called sob story comments. Now, the way this began was the Democratic Party goes around and they follow candidates and they take videotapes, and then they edit those videotapes and then they give them to liberal-leaning websites like the Huffington Post, for example. The Huffington Post ran with this out-of-context quote, and then the Journal Sentinel jumped on it. In fact, Dan Bice has a piece in the paper today which, by my count, is literally the third different story that he has written about this one story, with the headline, Hovde Profits Off Controversy. U.S. Senate candidate Eric Hovde said Thursday that he now regrets his videotaped remarks, complaining about the number of sob stories written by the media about poor individuals, but that doesn't mean Hovde can't profit from the controversy. So, Dan Bice, day number 3, riding this one. Gotcha. We got this rich conservative Republican candidate who doesn't care about the poor. Really. Joining me now on the line is Republican Senate candidate Eric Hovde. Good morning. How are you, sir?
Morning, Charlie. It's wonderful being on your show this morning.
Well, let's talk about the original quote. What were you trying to say? What was the point that the media is now trying to turn into this gaffe?
Sure. I spent 14 and a half minutes talking about our economy, laying out what we need to do to fix our economy, talking about the seriousness of our debt issues, that we're spending $1.3 trillion more a year than we're taking in. We're borrowing 38 cents in every dollar. We have more than 100% debt to our economy. I spent time talking about the collapse of Spain and Greece and how it's devastating their middle class and their poor. All this, I talked about the defense contractors and Wall Street and all the cronyism that is ripping off our system. And then I make one small comment about entitlements, saying, look, to a reporter, can you please stop writing about stories like food stamps and turn it into everything a sob story, instead of writing about the debt and how it's going to devastate our country and everybody in it. And so they clip off that last piece about devastating all the country. They clip out all the things in front of it where I talked about, the cronyism with defense contracts and all the rest, and they go to that one little segment and say, see, he doesn't care about the poor. The problem that they have is they pick the fight with the wrong guy on this issue. Well, I never go out there and talk a lot about all my charitable efforts because, as my Christian belief, I just don't go about promoting that stuff. They didn't realize they picked a fight with a guy who's had a foundation for 14 years, who's built homeless shelters all over the globe for street children, abandoned children. I have fund projects all over the United States. The list is so long. I mean, Meals on Wheels, food pantries, housing, road home here in Wisconsin for homeless families. And also have personally been involved. I send all my employees every year someplace around the globe or in the United States to do mission or charitable work. So I've challenged Arianna Huffington and said, look, I'll meet you any place, anytime, anywhere in front of a group of reporters if you're going to come out and make these attacks on me, and let's compare what you have done for the poor versus what I've done. But you know what? They make the attack, and then they just disappear, and that's the way they operate. And Charlie, think of those ads that Barrett were running at first against Scott Walker. He'd take these little quotes about how Scott was making this war on women, and he'd have like the Daily Cost and the Huffington Post. It's all these little liberal, left-leaning blogs that they write these inflammatory comments, and then the politicians take them like the real press is really writing about this.
Yeah.
And it's just so disingenuous. So we can't even have a conversation about trying to reform our entitlement problems where food stamps, it's very broken.
Well, you've obviously hit the big time because apparently Reverend Al Sharpton has been featuring this quote on MSNBC. So let me ask you about this because one of the points that Bice is trying to make is that when you were in Madison yesterday speaking to the WisPolitics.com luncheon, you said that you regretted this. Hovde was offering a very different take during a Thursday luncheon sponsored by the website WisPolitics, saying he now regrets his sob story comment, according to media accounts. So do you regret this?
Again, take the whole thing. I said I regret that anybody would take my comment and imply that I didn't care about the poor. But I fundamentally believe we need to talk about entitlements, and I challenge Arianna Huffington. So my only regret is that some people may misinterpret that on how I feel about the poor because they don't know all the things that I've done for people that are economically struggling. So here again, even in my response to it, a reporter, now I guess it's Dan Bice, I didn't see the article because I don't read his stuff, but has taken a slice of it and trying to interpret it in a different way. It's just amazing. You give a response that can be 2 or 5, or in my speech's case, 14 and a half minutes, and then they clip out 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 seconds of it and take it totally out of context.
You do understand that, of course, the narrative in this campaign, and what I think is interesting is that we'll see whether they do the same thing to Tammy Baldwin, but the Tammy Baldwin Democratic campaign this year is going to be on the 99% versus the 1%, that whoever the Republican is, whether it's you or anybody else, they're going to get the same thing, that you are in favor of the rich. You don't care about the rest of us. Mitt Romney cares about the rich. He doesn't care about the rest of us. So that is the narrative. So it is interesting the extent to which the media then pursues that narrative, that quote, that gotcha story. Okay, since I have you on the line, one of the things that you were talking about, and you've talked about rather extensively, are the challenges facing the global economy, the challenges facing the economy. How concerned ought we to be about this big story yesterday about the downgrade of the 15 largest banks in the country, and does that tell you that we are in fact at risk of a double-dip recession?
Oh, I don't think there's any question within the next 12 months we're probably going to be back in recession for a variety of different reasons. One, the Greek election, it doesn't really matter. Greece will eventually default again, or they will be pushed out. Spain is hemorrhaging money. They have huge current account deficits going, and their wage labor costs are about 12 to 18% higher than northern parts of Europe. The unemployment rate there is 25%. It's going to default. Eventually, the third largest bond market in the world, Italy, that will default. Then you look at our economic policies here with, the out of control spending. Business people across the board are saying, do we want to make that investment in that factory or that plant, or individuals? Do I want to buy that, new home? When they think, geez, if the federal government fails like it is in Europe, I don't want to put all this money out and see it all get destroyed. So people are moving their money to the sidelines and trying to put it as in safe a spot as possible. So we need sound economic policies, because if we don't, Charlie, I don't mean to scare people on a beautiful Friday, but we will we will hit the economic wall or economic cliff, and it's a matter of just a few years out.
Yeah, well, I mean, you actually do scare people because I listened to your full 14 minutes in this one gotcha quote, and what you were saying was that not many things scare you in life, but you were scared by this. You were scared by what you were seeing in the global economy, what you were seeing in the Fed, what you were seeing with our fiscal policy, and that you're seeing some storm clouds coming in a big way. And in the context of, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, was, hey, you guys in the media, instead of constantly writing about how we need to increase spending or take care of, bloat one more unaffordable program up, could you spend some time talking about the fact that we are about to hit the wall? This is big-time stuff. This is the real deal, and it is scary stuff right now.
Yeah, and,
none of that gets quoted, of course.
I'm 6'3", 225 pounds, and I fought martial arts, so I've really never been scared of anything in my life. But this is really scary because if you look at what's happening with Europe, and I said this in my speech, 50% of all Greek pension accounts got wiped out in their last restructuring. I mean, so that not only they have this enormous jobless rate, but their pension values are just being destroyed along with it. And what the path we're down and what this president's taking us down will lead us right off that cliff. And so, you can't even have a real discussion about something like food stamps or some of these programs that is spiraling out of control, where you have, people that are millionaires using food stamps, where, they're now, states are being paid to sign up more people on food stamps. People are getting them that have more than 100% of the poverty level income. You can have up to 130%. So what's happened? You go into a grocery store and ask the people at that checkout, at the checkout line who work there. A lot of them will tell you the people on food stamps are eating better food than they are. And we know there's massive fraud because they're being traded and trafficked on Craigslist and other programs. They're trying to shut it down now, where you sell them and then you can take the money and say, well, I lost mine, and get another food stamp card. So here's just a program. I'm even trying to talk about. Look, we've got to reform and get rid of the fraud in these programs, and then you just get absolutely attacked.
Yeah, well, it is fascinating. It's not enough that we've simply just expanded food stamp exponentially, and we have a record number of people who are now reliant on food stamps. But as you point out, we spend, is it $500 million or $500 million to bribe states to increase dependency? So saying, obviously, the federal government has decided that spending more money is a good thing, having more people dependent is such a good thing, that we will literally bribe states to get more money if you spend more money on food stamps. Eric Hovde, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it very much.